Thank you very much, Minister, for that very comprehensive presentation. And I have to say, I really appreciated the link between the construction of housing and the provision of training and sustainable employment, particularly for young people. And I think from my perspective, it's very important to link those together. And I thought that was a great strength of your remarks. Our next speaker will be Derrick Lichti, who is the Principal Consultant from CPCS. Mr. Lichti has been with CPCS since 2004. He's the head of their modelling practice and has developed operations, traffic and financial models on numerous rail, port, urban transit and power mandates. He's worked in Canada, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Botswana, South Africa, Namibia, Tanzania, Kenya, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Mozambique and Zimbabwe for both public sector and private sector clients. Most recently, he's completed railway rehabilitation studies in Tanzania and Zimbabwe as part of larger CPCS teams. He has a degree in systems design engineering from the University of Waterloo. Derrick.
Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about urban transit here in Nigeria, something that CPCS has been actively involved in. Where is the... Down to the right on the floor. Oh. There we go. So I'm a consultant with CPCS, and I've been there since 2004. We are an infrastructure consultancy. We're based in Canada. However, we have offices in Abuja, Lagos, Calabar, as well as Nairobi, Toronto, and recently in New Delhi. So I'll be fairly brief today, but we're going to talk a little bit about Lagos and what exactly is going on there right now for transit options. We've seen a little bit of detail about the FCT, and so we'll talk a little bit about Lagos. And then we're going to get into the Blue Line, which is a landmark solution to the transport problems. And we're going to briefly look at the impact on corridor development and integration with other modes of transport. So Lagos is definitely one of the largest cities in Africa, if not the largest. It is growing incredibly fast. The 1991 census showed a figure of 5.7 million people, and today the figure is somewhere between 17 and 20 million people, depending on who you talk to. But that growth is steady and will continue to increase. As such, that growth has not been the growth of infrastructure investment has not kept up with the development of the city. So there are many issues outstanding. So looking at these maps that I have here, the very first map there on the top left is from 1900. So we can see that the population was quite small back in 1900. And if we move across to the right, we see 1962, and then 1984, and then 2000. So we can see that Lagos has grown in population and also land mass quite significantly over a century. Now, looking at the city itself, I'll just briefly describe some of the colors here. The orange color that you see predominantly throughout there is high-density residential areas, and then the red areas that are kind of spotted throughout there are commercial areas. And the pink in the middle is the Lagos the International Airport. So we can see that there is quite a bit of high-density residential areas in Lagos, and then the yellow is the medium density. So we can see it's a highly dense city. Anybody looking at the census will see that some areas are in the tens of thousands of people per square kilometer. So transport is a very critical issue for Lagos, and there's currently solutions under development. So looking at the existing transport options, probably more for the Canadians in here, but we have danfos are the very predominant mode of transport that you see all over the city. When we were working there a couple of years ago on the Blue Line, our estimate was that there was between 75 and 125,000 of these vehicles traveling through Lagos on a daily basis, and they are the yellow vehicles that you can see in the picture there. Along with the danfos, there's the motorcycle taxis, which again there are thousands of. new within the last 10 years are the kekes, or some people might know them as rickshaws, the three-wheeled devices. Moldaways are larger transport buses that transport up to 60 people, private car, and then a recent BRT system that was launched in 2008 to much success. And then currently under development is light rail, and there's also a cable car option in the works. So transport in Lagos is guided by the Transport Master Plan. The key players in that, of course, are the Lagos State Government and also LAMATA, so the Lagos Metropolitan Area Transportation Authority. And they are the implementation agency of the state government, and they are the ones that are responsible for the BRT that was launched in 2008. So looking at the rail mass transit specifically, there are numerous lines proposed for development, and we're going to see a map of that in a second here. Currently, the blue line is under development and nearly complete, and I understand that the red line is also starting off shortly as well. So we're looking at using the Nrc Corridor. So the Nigeria Railway Corporation has an existing corridor through Lagos on the north-south line, and so the red line will look at using that corridor. And of course, we're looking at getting down to Akui and Victoria Island using a purpose-built rail bridge. So this map here, and I apologize for the size, but you can see there the blue line that runs east-west down along the bottom. That is the proposed corridor for the blue line, currently under development. The red line on the north-south corridor, that is where the existing Nrc corridor lies. And then the future lines that are planned include the yellow line going kind of to the northwest, the purple line going from the southwest to the northeast, and then all the way down to the green line down towards Lichti on the south. So there are big plans for Lagos, and it is well underway. The Lagos Blue Line itself really was a landmark PPP. The Lagos State Government knew that they had to absorb some risk, and so we tendered a design-build contract for that. CPCS were the advisors on that transaction. The operations and maintenance will operate as a 25-year concession, and in fact there is another good tie to Canada there, and that the current concessionaire that is under negotiation with the state government is looking to purchase and has purchased some cars from the subway here in Toronto. So any of you who have been out in the subway at all, you might see some of those cars in Lagos over the next year or two. So we're expecting that operations will begin by 2014 on that corridor, and we're expecting the demand to be quite heavy on that, expecting 200,000 passengers per day in year one. Just by comparison, the bus rapid transit line running north-south by the end of year one was running in the neighborhood of 200 to 250,000 passengers per day. So there is a high demand for transport. The blue line itself is 27 kilometers long. We can see a more detailed picture of it there. It is being built in two phases. Phase one is 7.5 kilometers running from National Theatre to Mile 2 there. So there are 4 stations being built. The blue line will eventually integrate with the red line on the north-south. And also the Badagry Expressway is newly developed as well and runs east-west out towards Badagry on the west part of Lagos. The blue line itself is at grade for most of it. There is an elevated section, and part of that elevated section has been complete, and I'll show you a couple pictures of that here on a couple slides. So as I mentioned before, we're expecting very, very high demand. That corridor is very, very congested. It's heavily populated, and current transit times are very high. Just as a comparison there, and I'll go back a slide here, from National Theatre there to Okokomaiko, I drove that myself a couple times while we were working there, and it would take 3 to 5 hours round trip. So it's very heavily congested, and that's about 20 kilometers. So this really is a landmark project that will reduce the transit time greatly for Lagosians. We're expecting that end-to-end will be somewhere around 30 minutes, perhaps a little bit longer. The rail line will be fully segregated and double-tracked. So along the corridor, we will see real estate values increase. We expect to see commercial developments around the stations. There'll be a natural adaptations. All those danfos that I mentioned earlier, we expect them to naturally adapt and provide good feeder service. One thing we have a hard time estimating is the pent-up demand for transit, and we expect that there is quite a bit. As from our focus groups, people did indicate to us that they do not travel just purely because of the time it takes to get from A to B. So we're expecting a good connection with the airport once the red line has been developed, and then other future passenger lines as well. So we'll just close down here with a couple of pictures of the developments. You can see here, these are recent pictures from late last year in 2012. So there's the elevated section going out towards National Theatre. So, we can see that there has been a lot of planning go into this, but the shovel is in the ground and work is getting done. There we can see the track bed being laid. And there we can see in the bottom right, those were some designs done by CPCS in our study, and we can see the actual station that has been built, and there really is excellent progress being made on this corridor. And just before I close, I also wanted to mention Abuja Mass Transit, something that CPCS was also involved in. It is under development and it is making excellent progress as well. And these are recent pictures that I took last week, actually. So we can see that there's a serious commitment from the governments to invest in the passenger rail services, and there will be more demand going down the line. There are many cities in Nigeria that we think are ripe for rail. Kano, Jos, there's heavily populated centers, and we expect that these projects will serve as good examples for those future projects. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.